A Republican wave in the House is still quite possible. CNN. The race for control of the US Senate has dominated news coverage of the midterms. That's not surprising. The polls are up plenty. The personalities are numerous, and we have a pretty good idea of races that will determine which party wins the majority. Yet it is the race for the US House that may be the more interesting one. Our CNN SSRS poll last week had Democrats up by 3 points on the generic congressional ballot within the margin of error and close to the recent average of polls, which has shown the parties about even. For reference, Republicans were ahead on the generic ballot at this point in the last two midterms when there was the Democratic president in 2010 and 2014. If the current tie on the generic ballot holds in the vote for the House, control of the chamber would be the toss up. Indeed, a number of people, including me, have noted the possibility of House Democrats maintaining their majority, but few non-partisan analysts think that's likely. Most acknowledge that Republicans are in the good position to take back the House this election. I'd make the argument, though, that we're underselling the potential of the big Republican night, and the potential for the GOP blowout is where we begin our look at the week that was in politics. Don't write off the chances of the red wave. 6 months ago, the massive GOP victory in the House seems the most likely possibility. Republicans were doing better on the generic congressional ballot than at any point in history so far out from the election. Since then, a combination of events, including the U.S. Supreme Court overturning of a Roe v. Wade, seems to tip the scales towards Democrat. A look at some non-polling data and fundamentals, however, suggests we shouldn't lose sight of the possibility of Republicans achieving a large win next month. Let's start with the House race ratings. These are design design designations that place such as the Cook Political Report and the Inside Elections give to individual district races based on the baby baby of factors, including how those districts have voted in the past and internal polling data. I gathered all the final house rating data I could from Cook since 2000. Specifically, the number of races rated as either a toss up or leaning towards one party right before the election. It turns out that these ratings, in aggregate, have done an accurate job at telling the story of House elections. When one party has more races in these two designations, it tends to do poorly. Right now, these are 23 more Democratic held seats than Republican ones in either the toss up or leaning category per Cook. Additionally, there are four Democratic seats that are rated as likely to flip to the GOP, taking into account what has been a small but fairly consistent trend of Republicans slightly outperforming race ratings since 2000. This would translate into a GOP net gain of 26 seats next month. This would put the Republicans at about 239 seats in total. Even without considering past Republican overperformance, The current race ratings would still translate to Republicans ending up with a net gain of 17 seats for 230 overall. This matches up with what Amy Water, publisher of the Cook Political Report, noted in the recent analysis. One side tends to pick up the bulk of Tulsa races, and that side has been the party not in the White House in midterms going back to 2006. While it could be argued that Republicans getting to 230 House seats wouldn't be a wave given their relatively high baseline heading into the election. 230 seats would be the same number Republicans ending up with after the historic 1994 midterm election, when they ended 50 years of uninterrupted Democratic control of the House. Speaking of that 1994 election, President Joe Biden's average approval rating, 43%, going into this midterm is lower than Bill Clinton's, 45%, heading into the 1994 midterm. In fact, Biden's approval is largely in line at an average of 33%, 43% with that of recent president. Clinton, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump all had average approval rating of between 43% and 45% at this point in their first terms. Their parties all suffered net losses of between 40 and 63 seats in the House. The opposition party ended up with between 230 and 242 seats. That's what the race rating suggests is the most likely range of House seats Republicans will hold after this election. Of, of recent president, only George W. Bush had a higher average approval rating at 62%. This party picked up House seats in 2002. Yes, other factors, most prominently the generic ballot, indicates that the House Democrats are going to do better. But as I pointed out last week, the generic ballot is far from a perfect predictors predictor. If the generic ballot result to hold through the election and the House Republicans outperform it by as much as they did in 2020, they very likely will end up somewhere in the range of 230 to 242 House seats. Election models by 538 and Jack Kirsten, which which are based on the baby of variables, give Republicans about one third chance of ending up with at least 230 seats. That's still better than the chance either model gives the Democrat of holding on to the House. Why Biden went to Oregon? Speaking on Democrats being in trouble, one of the last places we've expected them to be in trouble would be Oregon. It's a state Biden won by 16 points in 2020. So why was the president in the state on Friday and Saturday? It's because it's a rare deep blue state where Republicans have the good chance of picking up the governorship as well as a few U.S. House seats. The reason why Dragon could become the first Republican elected Oregon governor in 40 years are numerous. Most notably, Democrat turned independent Betsy Johnson appears to be cheapening Butch from Democratic nominee Tina Kotek, while Johnson isn't only taking from Kotek. Her voters are more likely to identify as Democrats than Republicans. Johnson's presence in the race means Dragon may only need 40% of the vote to win, not anywhere close to the majority. But Oregon's tight gubernatorial race isn't only about Johnson. Kotak is looking to succeed the Democratic governor, Kate Brown, who is the term limited. Brown is one of the least popular governors in the nation, hurt by the rise in homelessness and the cost of living. Kotak herself has been painted as too liberal. Trajan, on the other hand, has managed to escape one of the bigger charges levied against the other Republicans running for blue state governorship this year. She is firmly in the camp that believes the Biden regi- reg- legitimately won the 2020 election. That makes it harder to paint Trajan as too extreme. The Republicans are also looking for success down the ballot in Oregon. Election handicappers agree that the race in the fifth congressional district is quite competitive. Biden would have won the seat by 9 points under the poster redistricting lines, but GOP chances rose significantly after Republican Kurt Schrader was defeated by the more liberal challengers in the Democratic primary. Analysts are more split on their views of Oregon's 4th district and the newly created 6th district, but almost everyone agrees that former is at least in play and the latter could easily be won by Republicans. If Republicans, as expected, hold on the ruler 2nd district and win one of the three competitive districts, it will mark the first time they have held two House seats in Oregon in nearly 30 years. If they win two of these seats and the 2nd district, they would be the first time they've held at least half of Oregon's House seats in nearly 50 years. The bottom line, Republicans need to net just 5 seats nationally to win back the House majority, and more than half of those seats could be gained in Oregon. For your brief encounters, actually, people like their bosses. Monday, the closest weekday to October 16th, is Bosses Day. I know the stereotype is for people to hate their bosses. They even made a pretty funny movie about it. The data shows that something a bit different, however. Gallup has polled people's views towards their bosses since 1999, and the most people actually give their bosses the A OK. In 2021, for example, 63% of Americans said they were completely satisfied with their current boss. That was tied with 2020 for the highest percentage since 1999. It was significantly higher than 47% who said they were completely satisfied in 1999, and in the Americans who were somewhat satisfied with their bosses, 25%, and nearly 90% of Americans were satisfied. Just 2% of Americans, meanwhile, are completely dissatisfied with their boss. For the record, I like my bosses. Yes, I'm that much of suck up. Leftover data, solar power use rises. The percentage of Americans who say they have installed solar power panels at home is up to 8%. That has doubled from 4% in 2016 and up from 6% in 2019, according to the Pew Research Center. COVID-19 vaccination rate to stabilize in nursing homes. A Kaiser Family Foundation analysis of government data shows that the percentage of nursing home residents and staff who have been vaccinated or received a booster has basically stayed the same for the number of months. About 87% of residents and 88% of staff have received the primary series, while 74% of residents and 51% of staff staff have received at least one booster. Layout, Layoffs in news drop. Only 11% of large newspapers experienced the layoff in 2021. Few found, few fall find that's down from 33% in 2020 and 24% in 2019. Among digital native outlets, 3% had laid off in 2021. That's down from 80% of 80%, 18% 2020 and 11% in 2019.